Okay, button pressing has commenced, and here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. How are you? What's going on? Who are you? Are you new? If so, welcome, welcome. Have you been around before? Are you returning? Thank you for that. I'm glad you're all here. I hope this is finding you in a reasonable moment. Me, I am doing okay. I'm in a little bit of a time crunch this week. I am coming to you, at least I'm recording this. It'll come out tomorrow, but I'm recording on Halloween. And, there's a bit of anticipation and commotion in the house. My kids are getting ready. My niece is here with my sister-in-law. Everybody's getting geared up for the evening's festivities. My younger daughter, she is going as Shira. Do you know Shira? Well, she's incredibly cute. My wife made her a totally kick-ass costume, and she's more excited than usual for Halloween. I think that's because she is a huge fan of Shira, and she really looks like Shira, like they look alike. So she really feels that she can command the power of Grayskull. And it's particularly fun for me because I was a He-Man fan back when I was a young boy, and Shira is the descendant of He-Man. She's the protector of the power. So there's a nice thing there for me. Now, my older daughter, who's about to turn 12, I don't even know what to call what she's going as. She is going as some sort of anime-inspired death clown, I guess you would say. Oh, there's too much to say about my eldest daughter. Right now, she's down there wearing like a skull cap inside. like Kurt Cobain, if you were like me and you were like a grunge rocker in the 90s and we wore our skull caps like all the time when we were inside and stuff just because we liked the way it looked and stuff. Well, my 11, almost 12-year-old daughter is downstairs flowing that look right now, and I had to laugh to myself. The parents out there, you know what I'm talking about. So in any case, as you can maybe get from my vibe, there's all kinds of swirl going on around here, and I have just stolen away in this little calm before the storm to bring this week's episode to you. Speaking of which, my talk today with Michael Falcone is a little bit unusual. I have jumped onto a call with a random listener many times. Longtime listeners know I refer to them as wild card episodes. I did one just recently with Simon Goss. Shout out to you, Simon. And this is definitely a wild card episode with Michael. However, I would say this one is different than all of the others. Not just because I had so little information about Michael going into the conversation, but really just in terms of how it came about. Normally, I get email from somebody who shares something about their reflections on something they heard, or about work that they're doing, or about their experience of the podcast, or something about themselves that I feel like a little connection to, and in the moment, on a little bit of a whim, I think, oh, it'll be fun. I'll reach out to them and we'll talk, and then I bring them on the show. In this instance, Michael reached out to me. I mean, clearly he was a podcast listener because he knew to reach out to me and that I do a show where I have conversations with people, but he didn't speak about a particular episode that he had heard or any of his own experience. He really just sort of cryptically said, I think we could have a good conversation, and mentioned that he was one of these people that was found in a cave in Rishikesh at the beginning of the pandemic, and pointed to this article in the BBC about it. And for me, there was just a strange synchronicity in the moment because I had read that article back when it was published months and months and months and months ago. And it was just so random that somebody who was actually in that cave that they wrote about was now reaching out to me. I just went ahead and did it. A lot of you know, you've been around. I've been talking a lot about communications from beyond and intuitions. So I felt like, okay, seems like I should talk to Michael. So I did. And I will also say that at some point in the conversation, it took an unexpected turn for me personally. And I've definitely been contemplating it since. I don't want to spoil any more than that. I will maybe follow up on the other side with a few comments, but I want to let you go ahead and come with me in this conversation that I had with Michael. I do think it brings up a lot of stuff. It's a little bit of some continuation from last week's conversation with Josh Schrei. To all of you who reached out to me and went on to listen to his show, I told you so, right? Good stuff. So I think today is a little bit of some continuation off of that and brings up some important points around some of these areas we've been talking about. So for whatever that's worth to any of you, I'm excited for you to hear it today. Real quick before we get to that, let me mention a quick update about the teacher training I'm doing in 2022. I have been mentioning this over the last few weeks that I'm starting this new program. I'm excited about it. I feel like it's time for me to walk my talk, so to speak. I've been railing against the problems of the way that people are giving yoga education. So now it's time for me to put up or shut up, I think. And I'm definitely game for that challenge. I've been doing a lot of work on it and feeling excited about it. As I've been mentioning, there is going to be some info sessions. The first one is happening on November 8th. And you are welcome to come to that. There are 2 different times that it's happening that day, so it should accommodate whatever time zone that you are in. If you go to jbrownyoga.com/training, you can see this video I made a little bit about it. You can fill out an application. It's just a 3-question application that does not lock you in, but it would be helpful if you filled that out. Even if you don't, though, whether you fill out an application or not, you're still welcome to come to the info sessions. And the link and the password and the date and information and all the stuff that you need to know about how to come to that info session with me is right there on that page, jbrownyoga.com/training. Also, let me take a moment to show a little bit of love to our podcast premium subscribers, because this show is completely listener supported through premium subscribers. And I am incredibly grateful to the people who are helping us out in this way. I want to say what's up and thank you to Jessica Bleachmore and Lauren Rhodes. Thanks, Jessica and Lauren, and the rest of our subscribers. If you are someone who has been listening to the show and you get some value from it, you appreciate it, you learn something from it, then it would be really great if you would help support it. And the way to do that is to become a podcast premium subscriber. It's a choose your rate. You can cancel at any time. And if you don't have any money right now and you want to access the full archives, you can just email us and we will totally give you a free account. You can find out more about becoming a podcast premium subscriber. You can find your way to the training program and the rest of my stuff. Everything I'm doing right now can be found at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, y'all, let's leave it there. I will touch base with you on the other side. For now, please enjoy this conversation that I had with Michael Falcone. Hello?
Yes, hello.
Michael.
Yes, hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing okay, all things considered. How about you?
Well, I'm a little nervous, to be honest. I've never done anything like this, and I can barely hear myself speak. I have nice headphones on,
Okay.
so Is the volume okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay if you can hear me okay.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. It's just, yeah, like I say, these are good headphones, so like hearing my own voice is, kind of difficult. But
I don't understand. So you're using what kind of headphones do your headphones have a microphone on it, or are you using the built-in microphone on your computer?
no, the microphone is built into the headphones.
Okay.
They're just like noise canceling ones, and
Oh, yes. Actually, that's actually a thing for me. It's funny that you mentioned that because I bought myself like a set of headphones that, like they're just these old $15 Panasonic headphones that have no noise cancellation for that exact same reason. Because if you wear a certain kind of headphones, it's kind of like it changes how your voice sounds to you, right? Like if someone comes in and you yell at them because you have headphones on or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But don't worry about it. It sounds totally normal. Hopefully it's not too weird for you.
Yeah.
Is it okay? I mean, it sounds okay to me. Is it all right for you? Can you think you can hang with it?
Yeah. I'll be fine. Thanks.
All right. Well, listen, Michael, it's funny that you said that you were a little nervous. I was initially a little bit nervous to talk to you because frankly, the genesis of this conversation is somewhat unusual, and I'll be happy to explain why to you.
Yeah, sure.
But also, there's just very little about you in the work on the internet. Like you have a incredibly light digital footprint. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. So it was a little bit of like a very gut feeling decision.
Yeah.
But I have to say, and I'll get to this as well, after reading the piece, that one thing that you put out there with your name on it, the thing that you wrote and posted on Medium, I knew exactly why I was supposed to talk to you.
Okay, so you're talking about the one from the Kalahari.
Yes. And I'll explain that to you as well. So all of that's to say, I'm excited to talk with you, and I'm glad that you reached out. And maybe I will just explain some of this because it might put you at ease, and it'll also clue in anybody who's listening to this later.
Okay.
So, first thing I would say is that it is very, very rare that, somebody reaches out to me about coming on the show and doesn't have anything that they're trying to promote at all. Like even like the times like when I've reached out to just like podcast listeners, I reached out to them. They're yoga teachers and whatever, that there's possibility that somebody would hear them on the show and then take their classes or whatever. But for you, as far as I could tell, there was like nothing that you were trying to promote at all. And the first thing that caught my eye is I had seen that report in the BBC about people being found in a cave in Rishikesh at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I had seen that, and I took note of it because I spent a little time there in 1998. I traveled in India for 3 months. I was in Rishikesh for a few weeks. And there was a moment where while I was in Rishikesh, I seriously considered not going back and going to live in a cave. That was like a very serious consideration. Yeah. And when I saw that article, I thought, oh, that could have been me. Yeah. And so when you mentioned that you were one of the people in the cave, I was like, oh my God, he was in the cave.
Yeah.
But here's the real reason, and then I'll stop jabbering on. But here's the real reason why I feel like we're talking. And this is the part that you don't know.
Okay.
Which is that maybe a day or two before you emailed me,
okay,
I had recorded a talk with a guy named Josh Schrei, who it'll post before this episode posts. And Josh Schrei, he teaches about, God, I don't even know he calls it the mythic body. But essentially what we were talking about is that if you look at the course of human history, like if you look at human history as is conventionally known to be, the majority of the time, like 99% of the time, our ancestors were living in what he refers to as an animist world. So like the postmodern world of randomness that current generations have been born into is relatively new. That for a much longer period of time, human beings lived with a conception of the world that was more fully formed. And it involved rhythm and ritual and relationship to environment.
Right.
He specifically studied shaman cultures and indigenous cultures and the vision questing that they do, and essentially the world of spirit and mystical realities. And you listen to the show, so you know I talk about that stuff, or try to, because it's been on my mind. So essentially, I'd had this whole conversation with him about this, but he's a teacher. He was like born he was raised in a monastery, and like he had a very unusual upbringing. And when you reached out to me, I was like, you seem to be an example more of someone like me who unexplainably, for some reason, is drawn to some of these things. Like you lived it, you went to the desert.
Yeah.
So in any case, all of that is some introduction for you and anybody listening to know why we're talking and why I'm excited to talk to you, because it does seem to me that you were right, that whatever it is, for whatever reason that you've been doing what you've been doing, it does seem really relevant to the conversation I've been having on this show recently.
Right.
So I guess all of that, with that said, I'm wondering from your side of it, why did you reach out to me? Like, did you hear something on the show, or was it just the general vibe of the show, or what was the motivation behind you emailing me?
So I feel like after everything I've experienced and the end of my experience, I do have some important things and basically messages that people should know. Some realities that, I've found, and truths that I've kind of uncovered through this journey. And so the reason I don't have, much of a digital footprint, most of the last 3 years, I've been back in the US for about a year now, but for 3 years, I started in Africa with the Bushmen, and then I was in India and Nepal, most basically in the mountains, either in my tent or in a cave. Or I don't know if you also read the piece that I think I sent you. I wrote an article or a story for a travel magazine.
Yeah, I read some other stuff. I also linked to some of the teachers that you cited that you studied with. So I have a little bit of a sense, but still, like, I don't know much about it. It's scant information. So I am curious. I guess even before we get to the last 3 years, I'm also curious, because I did read you writing about how it was essentially like a moment in a yoga class that decided to make you take a different course. Like you have a law degree, but you didn't end up becoming a lawyer, or did you? I don't even know.
No, I walked away from a career in the law many years ago, but I do have a degree. I graduated from law school in 2009 and basically decided it was not a system I wanted to be part of.
And was there something that happened in specific that comes to mind, or was a conglomeration? Because you finished the degree and then decided, was there something that really like marked it for you? Like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, so after my first year of law school, I had probably I stumbled into the most amazing internship, where I was working with a criminal defense lawyer in New York. And so just as a first year law student, I was involved in trials and, working with clients and writing papers and doing real legal work. So I really got to see what the system was like and what and basically what I didn't like about it. And to be honest, after that first internship, I almost didn't go back to finish the degree, but, I'd already put in a bunch of time and money, and
I get it. You finish it out. Totally. I get it.
So, all right, might as well finish the degree, but I wasn't so much into it even at that point. So, and I guess I can just point out a couple of things about the legal system itself. I guess one would be that our system is completely adversarial instead of constructive or truth seeking. So, and what I mean by that is, it's the prosecution's job to do everything they can to, say, throw the book at a defendant and do everything they can to win, and the other side's doing everything they can to win, as opposed to people coming together, seeking to find out, what actually happened in whatever instance, and making amends, basically, and rehabilitating people, as opposed to just, okay, this
warfare, some kind of legal warfare.
Yeah. So you won the case, break out the champagne. But meanwhile, someone's going to jail for so a big part of it for me too was I sat in a lot of courtrooms watching people being sentenced to so many years of their lives for not necessarily violent crimes. And one thing that kind of stuck out for me too was, I had always been taught, and I feel like people are, we say, don't judge. And here is this judge sentencing these people, and the judge, is a person no more enlightened than I am.
Judge doesn't necessarily have any particular wisdom behind their judgments, huh?
Yeah, and when I was working as a lawyer, or with this lawyer at the time, even that their ability to judge was kind of being taken away by things like mandatory minimum sentencing and things like that. So like, for example, if the judge wanted to give, say, a lighter sentence, he would have to make certain findings about this person and this and that. So the process even of judging was kind of being legislated more towards not leniency. For some reason, I can't come up with the the word I'm looking for.
That's all right. But I understand what you're saying, and I understand, like, I haven't had too many brushes with our legal system, and I'm happy to say, but the times when I have had to deal with our legal system, it seems very much like our healthcare system, which I have plenty of experience with. It just seems totally inhumane on some level.
Yeah, well, there is one of the kind of law school jokes that another thing for me, some of these jokes, at some point I started saying, well, wait a second, this isn't actually funny.
Sometimes jokes are based on fucked up shit, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, and the joke is, so, a professor would call on a student and say, what's your sense? How do you feel this case should come out? What should the outcome be? And, they'd give a response, and then the professor would say, okay, well, that's the human answer, but we're looking for the legal answer. And
that's exactly the point. Wow.
And then that's not to say that, the guy that I worked for in New York, I had a lot of respect for, and I think he's doing good work. And I do think it's possible to do good work as a lawyer. I just didn't think it was for me.
You got to do it within a totally broken system, though.
Yeah, it's a system that is definitely designed to, you're not allowed to use your full capacity as a human. And so what I mean by that is, the jury, the lawyers fight about what the jury gets to hear, and then the jury just finds facts, but they're not a part of the sentencing process. And, so everything's kind of compartmentalized. So as I say before, I just see, that there could be a way to do things where people come together to problem solve and rehabilitate, as opposed to, like I say, the adversarial way that it is set up.
I hear that. And it seems to me that a lot of people start to look to other examples in human existence of people who came together in different ways. And a lot of times it's about indigenous cultures. How is it that you decide that you want to go study with somebody in Africa? I mentioned, I read this thing about a moment in a yoga class. What was that? What happened in this moment in a yoga class that made you decide to embark on this journey, as you call it? So
that moment was, I struggled for a lot of years with, and I don't even think the problem was necessarily, it was mostly mental, I think. I have to eat a certain way and I have to do this and that to be healthy. And just in this class, as this guy was talking, I kind of, just looked around me. It was like, everywhere I go, I have to be carrying around a liter of water and I have the cell phone. And I just kind of thought back to when I was a kid. And if I wanted to, if I wanted to go out into the woods for a day, I took my bike, I took nothing else, and disappeared into the woods for a day. No cell phone, no anything. And it wasn't a big deal. After I got home, no one even asked me where I was. This was just not even something that I thought about. It was completely unremarkable. And so I guess I kind of realized I'd lost that, and was something that if I really wanted to be healthy, that's the kind of mentality that, I would need.
Mm-hmm. And what was it? I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm asking you to remind me. What was it that the teacher said in class that sparked you? Because you referenced that the teacher was talking about something in class. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah. He was talking about Dharma. And I think he and a few friends were on a hiking trip or something and looking for a trail, and they couldn't find it. And, they'd go back and maybe look for signs or markers. And I guess he was talking about the need to have a trail and the need to have a trail is, he was saying that's Dharma, right? The necessity to have that kind of clear-cut path in front of you. And I guess what that sparked in me is just the desire to explore. And now that I'm back in the US, as opposed to what I was doing, say, in Africa or India, one thing that I kind of don't like about hiking around here is that everything is very easy and well marked. There doesn't seem to be much. There's not much of a sense of exploration and adventure.
Well, it's interesting because you referred to it as like a kind of vitality, and you were connecting it with something that's interesting to me too about this idea of. I've talked about it in the past, even in terms of like my experience of temperature and how my entire life I've been in conditioned environments. So right. I don't have a direct relationship to hot and cold as the environment dictates it.
Okay.
I'm like removed from that in my existence. And, you wrote about, I guess this was in the desert, but just like embarking upon a day and like not having enough water with you or food with you. And I think about like my wife like freaking out because we didn't bring snacks and my daughters might get hungry while they're at the playground or whatever.
Yeah.
How there's no moments where you're talking about it as adventure, but it's even just like the way of being in life where everything's not already at your disposal, or it's going to unfold or something.
Right. And yeah, I guess this is what I'm talking about. And I think I mentioned this to friends as what I had lost at some point was, they talk on survival shows, for example, about the number one thing you need to keep in a survival situation is your spirit. Your spirit's up and a positive attitude. And I used to say to friends of mine occasionally, survivalism didn't come up all that often, but, I think I would be pretty good just because I would be able to keep that kind of mentality. And that in turn really has an effect on your physicality.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I did have the experience in India of being lost in the mountains for two nights without food or water.
Okay, so wait a second. So I want to hear about when you first leave on your first part of this journey and you go to Africa first. Why did you go to Africa first?
I guess I had my shamanic journey began in Africa in 2016. But I will say I was always drawn to the Bushmen from things that I read, and just having that.
Right. There's a few books that you mentioned, right? What were those books that you had read that were important to you?
Yeah, they were Heart of the Hunter by Lawrence Vanderpost, and a couple of books by Bradford Keeney, and I don't remember the names now, but and his books I kind of appreciated because he really let the Bushmen speak themselves a lot. A lot of what the books were stories or interviews with the Bushmen or whatever. And I just really appreciated their very direct connection to nature, their very simplistic spirituality. Their healers would say that if you're going to be a healer, your heart needs to be open to everybody, absolutely everybody. So for many years, it was definitely kind of on my bucket list, I guess you would say. Not that I had one, but to go and live with the Bushmen. And
but that's like I did it in my early 20s. I saved some money and I went to India for 3 months. But I think about trying to do that later in my life. It's a huge thing to do. Like, it's like a crazy idea.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I guess.
So, all right. So when do you decide and when do you buy the ticket to Africa, and why this particular teacher, Mandanza Kandemwa, or I'm sorry if I mispronounced it.
Kandemwa.
Kandemwa, yeah.
Well, this, a different mentor of mine called this particular trip a recce, which like a reconnaissance mission. So, how did Mandaza come up? I think, okay, yeah, I remember. So I had needed healing in my life, and I went searching in a few different places. I got an energy healing from a Qigong master as one example.
And did that have a big impact? What was that like?
I think the energy definitely felt real, but it wasn't enough. And I found a shaman online, and at some point kind of just said, all right, forget it. Let's try it. Nothing else has kind of been enough. So let's do it. And I started working with him, and that's when things really started to unfold. I started to have a lot of dreams that seemed to be guiding me, and a lot of different things happening in my life. And what's interesting I did some ritual work with him.
And who is this online shaman person?
I actually can't mention his name.
Okay, good on you. Don't mention it. All right, I like that. Yeah. You got to keep it on the down low. That's the way that stuff continues to work, probably.
Yeah.
But you found him online, so he's on there.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has, some more presence than I do, anyways.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, but you didn't think to go be with that teacher. Why did you end up with Mandanza?
Well, this man that I was working with, he doesn't actually teach anyone, or he doesn't accept, like students, to become a shaman or anything like that.
I see.
And then, so, I kind of started to have different experiences that are very hard to explain, quite frankly, and then started to do research online and came across, to delve into the hard to explain type of stuff. I had one day where it definitely seemed, like spirit was with me and around me. And I actually just walked into a coffee shop, and there was like a guy sitting there with an hourglass painted on his face. And there was a book on the counter, which was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then I went home and I just started looking online for, different teachers in Africa. And I came up with a couple of different possibilities. And then I sent, these possibilities to, this mentor of mine and a friend of his. And they were kind of like, whoa, you need to be careful. There's plenty of shamans in Africa that don't necessarily just play for team good. But anyway, then I came across the White Lion Project, and the name of the lion was Aslan. The lion from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And Mandanza was a teacher, or maybe he still is. Linda Tucker of the White Lion Project runs like kind of a leadership camp that Mandanza was a teacher at. And so that's how I found Mandanza and decided to go check him out.
And what was that like? What did you do with him?
So there was a European guy there at the same time, and we just did a lot of different ritual work, a lot of dream work, and the two of us, me and the European guy, would kind of have dreams for each other about the different kinds of spiritual work we needed to do.
Can I ask, and of course, only divulge what you feel is appropriate to divulge. When you say ritual work and dream work, earlier when we started this conversation, I mentioned my talk with Josh Fry. He talked about, a context of ritual and what he called technologies of rapture.
Right.
So like these rituals, what were the rituals that you were doing? And were they about kind of like bringing you into kind of more like different states? What do you mean when you say ritual work and dream work? What does that really amount to or look like?
Right. Okay. So I can give a couple of examples, but so one, each morning we would, sit with Mandanza and talk about, the dreams that we had. And I had one where there was, a bunch of African kids buried up to their necks in the earth. And I didn't know, what this meant at the time. Mandanza immediately was like, oh, okay, I know. Oh, I should step back for a minute and say, so what this is all really about, the idea is to connect with your ancestors and let them be guides for you and do the work of letting them into your life to clear your karma, clear any negativity around you, to to really open yourself up to your own destiny, and kind of just let them be guides along the way. And
now, wait a second. You jumped back to say that. Does that come from your learning over all these different teachers, or is that like fundamental to the work that you did with Mandanza? Like, where does that idea about your connecting with your ancestors? First, it's based in a belief that you can do such a thing, that the spirits of your ancestors can communicate with you.
Right.
That's what I mean by an animist world. You see, that's what an animist world means, because it believes that's possible, that you can connect with your ancestors and they'll communicate with you.
Right. And so that had been happening with me for, a while.
So that's the unexplainable experiences you were mentioning, like you were getting messages and stuff.
Yeah. And that's, and those messages really only kind of intensified, while I was working with Mandanza and stuff.
I imagine they would, when you just sit around and talk about your dreams and be in a place that's not distracted by all the other things that would cloud your ability to perceive it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then the rituals that you do, are, they could be water rituals. I started to mention the burial ritual, but it's kind of an ancient ritual, and we didn't do this fully. The ancient way is, the Bushmen or whoever would go into the desert and bury themselves up to their necks and spend an entire night, with, maybe an animal coming up and smelling them. And the idea was, to show no fear and last the entire night buried up to their neck in the,
see, that goes back to your beginning thing about like not having food and going out or whatever, like that, facing the unknown or something, or the fear.
Yeah. And so it's about facing those things, facing fear, maintaining your own, testing your own limits, really knowing. And so when I first went out, say on a hunting trip with the Bushmen, when I was with them, I was really afraid. We were 6 adults and they were carrying 2 liters for 5 of them. And so I didn't want to be the guy that was carrying, a 2-liter water bottle for myself. So I had, probably half a liter and no food. So, I was scared, but then, at the end of the day, you start to realize again, okay, my body can adapt. I can.
Well, you told the story, you skipped ahead. You told the story about how it got right to the point where you really were basically out of water and it could have gone bad. And that's when the universe gave you food or whatever. Like it revealed itself to you at the moment that it was meant or needed to be revealed or whatever.
Yeah. And the Kalahari, I don't know if it's considered, a true desert. There is, some food to be found out there. And so, I think we found, like a wild plum tree or something like that. And, some raisinberry bushes. And so, we nibbled a little bit and stuff, but yeah, there were definitely times they actually dug out, a porcupine hill and it took a long time. And, so I was definitely getting, a bit scared that, it's getting late in the day. We are almost out of water and, but they didn't seem, and that gave me a lot of confidence too. The fact that, they were just completely calm. They didn't care at all. And so that gave me a lot of confidence, just seeing how relaxed and at ease they were. And
it worked out.
It worked out.
So that's a lesson. And maybe you're like, wow, I was worried and it still worked out. Maybe if I wasn't worrying, it would have still worked out.
Yeah. I mean, a point definitely could have come, I suppose, where, if it had become an overnight trip where I might have had to speak up and say, I don't know about you guys, but I need a drink. But
yeah. But it didn't come to that. That's my point. Like, you were provided for in the moment before you needed to do that.
Yeah. So that worked out. But anyway, so that's kind of the point of ritual. One of them anyway. And also trying, I suppose, to become aware of what's going on at a deeper level of yourself, in your subconscious, or anything karmic that you may not be aware of that you need to take care of, so that you can progress down the spiritual path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I remember I particularly liked something I saw you wrote about as it pertained to coffee, because I started drinking coffee not that long ago, and I have a coffee ritual now. Like, I just have 1 cup a day.
Okay.
And I really like it. It really, I don't know that I mean, maybe I haven't tried to stop my ritual since I started it. So I don't know how addicted I am at this point, probably quite a bit. But I think that for me, it always related to something that I once heard someone say, a man named U.G. Krishnamurti. And it was talking about how after you have some experiences, like you're talking about, even where maybe you have a sense of the underlying fabric of life that sometimes is not seen, you're still living in the world, still, especially if you're like a Westerner like me. And he would say this thing, don't be in conflict with your cup of coffee. That was the teaching. And it was basically this idea of you can be in the world. And so, I don't know, your consideration of coffee resonated with me, because it was about that very thing, as far as I can tell, not just being in conflict with like your feeling of want or need for coffee, but like what it represents in terms of the spiritual path.
Well, I think for me, I needed to re-examine the way that I looked at these things, right? So, I mean, coffee for me, it was a habit, probably addicted to it or whatever. But the point was, for a long time, really saw that as a problem. And I was always kind of like, oh, I need to get off or drink as little as possible, or keep a journal of how many ounces I had a day.
Right. Counting. If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.